Okay, welcome everyone to the April 30th, 2024 MicroProfile Live Hangout. Do we have a link to the meeting minutes in the chat? We should definitely post. I can do that too, because I have it up. Oops. Team chat. Uh-oh. I gotta find the right.
But John doesn't have marketing ones. No, the
Oh yeah, that's the wrong one. That's the one I meant. It's there. Yeah, I created the link to something. That's why it was there. Okay. There it is. All right, Reza already put it in. Thank you, Reza. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Okay, this is it. Okay. There's a link to the meeting minutes in the chat. And please add your name as an attendee. And it is everyone's shared responsibility to take notes. This meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube at some point, probably in the next couple of days. Okay, not a huge agenda today. I'm going to talk a little bit about MicroProfile 7 and the status. I thought we would go over a little bit of review of a couple of things. The first is yesterday's marketing discussion around MicroProfile adoption metrics. A quick review. We don't have to re uh, litigate the discussion for like that's not the word I wanted to use, right? But we don't have to rehash the discussion, do it over again. We can go back and listen to the recording. And then maybe a little bit about the results of the MicroProfile AI call, which is steadily over 10 attendees, right? So a lot of participation, which is pretty awesome. We had Clement kind of call in and give his perspective of where Quarkus is as it relates to its Lang chain 4J extension. So all righty. Emily, does anyone else have anything else they wanted to cover? Oh, and maybe a quick Dev Nexus review. Yeah, okay, so let's, Emily, is there anything that you wanted to cover in MicroProfile 7? Anything different?
Uh, yeah, we'll quickly go through basically I think what we discussed in the technical call last week. So it's all the specs are making steady progress. Basically it's kind of the telemetry. Probably we would be able to do a release candidate sometime next week. And OpenAPI seems to need more kind of the work, and a lot changes need to be done. And REST client, the 3 people like James from Red Hat and Jim and Adam from IBM. So they basically worked together kind of quite well, collaborated well, and then trying to do some PRs. So they are confident trying to get something out probably at the end of May. Fault tolerance, making good progress. Yeah, so overall, I think is good progress. Also, we discussed at technical call. So MicroProfile 7, if you click on the release timeline, so we basically target for the 6th August. I think I forgot to bring up on a marketing call yesterday. But anyway, marketing call yesterday was not very well attended. So we will try to bring it up, pencil in. I think I will start with get an issue to track this progress, or maybe it's it's better for Emerson, to raise the issue for the releases and etc. Yeah, so that's pretty much.
Yeah, the reason we were going to bring it up on the marketing call is because the marketing release might be different than the actual technical release, right? So that's the context of that. So what you see listed on August 6th is the technical release, but from a marketing perspective, right, we'll just have to discuss if that's the day that we also want to try and release it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. Let's see here. I'm going to take this one down for now. Well, I think what I'm going to say, this one had 11 attendees. And I think, Emily, you've already created the ticket, so I think we have that one done. So, Emily, do you want to give any update on the MicroProfile AI discussion?
Yeah, so the AI discussion was, as John said earlier, was very well attended, attended in the past few weeks. So it's a lot of folks from basically individuals and not part of even working group members. So it's we did have a really good conversation, and then it's kind of, as John you mentioned also, Clement basically is manager launching 4G integration on Quarkus, also came to the call, and he planned to join the call regularly as well. So the plan is we are going to create some small kind of project to prototype with our thinking about MicroProfile AI. Probably it's with the kind of the chat API and also embeddings for the RAG point of view and etc. So that's integrated nicely with the CDI, MicroProfile config, or REST client, and etc. So yeah, so that's pretty good, and the people are pretty excited. And Antoine is used to basically many led the MicroProfile health, and he's back and trying to help out the MicroProfile AI perspective. So that's really good. And also, Reza also mentioned Antonio from Microsoft is also, yeah, pretty active there as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll bring up is I think it's well understood that there's not going to be a spec this calendar year. It's just too soon. And my personal belief is that we're probably looking at the late part of next calendar year. So at the earliest, we'll just have to see how the whole work right on the small RI project kind of comes out and what the industry, where the industry is at. But Clement made comments like he's had to have multiple changes to the APIs already, right? It's just moving too fast.
Yeah. So basically, it's great. I think we learn together and also trying to try out different things. And hopefully, if we could get something out in 2025, that would be great. So as you know, Spring AI gained a lot kind of traction. Yeah, from the conferences, talks, probably Vince also noticed that. So we need to basically quickly cover that space from MicroProfile point of view as well.
Yeah, I do think it's pretty huge that this conversation is happening within the MicroProfile community. It's kind of where we're all coming together to work on it. Although it's not ready for a spec, the conversation is still happening here, which to me is like a pretty big thing for MicroProfile. So we should continue to kind of get the word out that MicroProfile is collaborating with the rest of the industry, because there's a lot of individuals. It's not just corporations. Let's see if I have it here somewhere. Copy.
You get a link to that.
Yeah. So you'll see that there are some individuals as well, right? It's not all traditional vendors. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Still seeing the minutes on the live Hangout. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, sorry.
That's right. Sorry, it's my fault.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the recording's up on YouTube yet. I'll double check, and if it is, I'll link it here. I created the ticket yesterday. Okay. All right, so that's it for AI. On the marketing call, yeah, so I'm gonna switch gears, right? Unless there's any comments on the MicroProfile AI stuff. Okay, so we met yesterday in the marketing call. The primary topic was the MicroProfile adoption metrics. I don't know if that's the right word, Reza, but You had created a slide deck. You had done a little bit of research, and I was wondering maybe if you wanted to summarize it. And we don't have to rehash the conversation. The recording will be up. I just posted the Git ticket, so Ryan should be publishing that to YouTube. And the meeting minutes are there, and the slide deck is there. But Reza, if you'd like to kind of give a summary of what we talked about and maybe what the next steps are, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Do you want me to briefly go over the deck? I can do 10 minutes or something like that. If not, I can just verbally describe it.
Well, we don't have a whole lot on the agenda. The DevNexus review is kind of the only other thing. Do people want to see that? So, see the slide deck on the adoption metrics tracking it?
But I wouldn't mind seeing it, to be honest.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and do it, Reza.
Okay, so I'll begin sharing now, and whoever's sharing, okay, thank you, whoever that was.
That was me. You're welcome.
Okay, so first and foremost, we did decide upon a place to put this deck. So it is on the MicroProfile drive. And I think what I've done is, the exact location I think is going to be a little bit tricky. So what I've done is I've went ahead and shared a link. The upload on the MicroProfile drive is the PDF version. You can take a look at it offline if you would like. So basically, if you recall, we had decided upon Google Trends as a sort of a baseline way of for us to be tracking certainly MicroProfile marketing performance and maybe even MicroProfile performance in general. But aside from that, I did want to actually cross-check with a few other metrics. So I've actually put all the metrics in the PowerPoint. I think after a while we may converge on a fewer number, but if you have other ideas on how to track sort of MicroProfile performance, in terms of in a measurable fashion, either let me know or you could also do your own thing and share it with me, whatever it is that you prefer. Okay, so here's how the Google Trends look like. So basically, I think it's relatively self-explanatory. I think it's fair to say we're essentially more or less stagnated at this point, and we have been for a while. It's not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for quite a bit of time. We had some initial growth, I would say, that flatlined around, let's say, 2019. We had a dip that more or less coincides with COVID. So you can kind of disregard that, if you will. But regardless, I think, there is no really getting around the fact that it is, in terms of adoption and interest as measured by Google Trends, we're stagnated, if not declining slightly. This may actually be a declining curve. We will see as we keep an eye on things, but you definitely can interpret this as a bit of a downward curve at this point. So what I also wanted to do is cross-check this with some other interesting data points. So what I did was I went ahead and compared it to, at least to start with our nearest neighbor, which is what we do, Jakarta Working Group and Jakarta. So when you measure that, there's definitely some clear observations. So Jakarta, as you know, started a little bit later than MicroProfile. But what you can observe is they are sort of have pardon me a moment, I'm going to go ahead and shut down the Teams. This is life. Unfortunately, nothing ever stops for me. Just keeps, parallel things keeps going. So pardon me, I'm going to shut down Teams from now. Hopefully not too much of an interruption. Okay, so what you can reasonably say is that Jakarta is on a linear curve, linear growth curve. It's not quite on a strong growth curve, but compared with us, they're definitely on a linear growth curve and more of a consistent growth curve than MicroProfile has been, especially in the past few years or so. But in general, you can see it's an upward trend. But all of that is actually a little bit moot. I'll say why that is in a moment. But I did go ahead and compare with them actually a number of different times. But the one that's notable is this is MicroProfile and Quarkus. So what you can see is, again, Quarkus has started, a lot later than MicroProfile, but they also are, this is still not an exponential curve. I would say this is very much a linear curve. It's a stronger curve than certainly what is there for Jakarta EE. So again, you can see that we're stagnated or declining, whereas there is a growth curve, at least for Quarkus. All of that becomes pretty moot when you compare this with Spring Boot. Now remember, Spring Boot is a 15-year-old technology, so this is a 15-year-old term at this point. So it is actually relatively remarkable, you have to say that, yeah, again, it's a linear growth curve for Spring Boot, not anything exponential, but in terms of magnitude, when you put even Quarkus or certainly MicroProfile or Jakarta EE, it becomes almost nothing, we're almost at the zero mark when you do that, when you put it on a graph, when you compare in terms of the magnitudes of Spring Boot adoption. And even Quarkus, while it has probably a stronger growth curve, not probably, it does have a stronger growth curve, even as compared with Jakarta EE, but even that is almost negligible in terms of its market overall adoption performance. So you can see those same type of trends essentially bear out more or less in whatever metric you choose. So I chose some of the ones that we typically would do, certainly at Microsoft for various technologies where we would want to measure sort of the effectiveness of technology adoption. And one of the other ones you could pick is industry surveys. And the only one that really measures both MicroProfile and Jakarta EE is the Jakarta EE Developer Survey. And again, you can see, basically, this is consistent with what you see in the Google Trends, which is a slight decline, not a large decline, but a slight decline nonetheless. Year over year, 4% loss in this case, from 30% to 26%, whereas Jakarta EE, whereas they should have probably shown a little bit of a growth, it didn't. It shows a sort of a stagnating number of around about 50%. There's other metrics I looked at as well. One of the more interesting ones, in my opinion, especially that has real world ramifications, is jobs. So typically, I only stop by looking at Indeed because it's a meta website, so it gathers up the data for various websites in terms of jobs. But when I did a search, typically when I do a search on Indeed, and just out of curiosity for Jakarta EE MicroProfile, typically I find a handful, less than 10 neighborhood. But this one I found absolutely zero. So I went ahead and did a search on Dice, which is a tech career center, probably the largest tech career site out there. And again, no jobs at all for MicroProfile. And then I went ahead and did Monster, which is probably the largest single job site. And I only found one. So this is pretty sobering statistics. For the age that MicroProfile has been in terms of what our real world adoption probably looks like. I also looked at GitHub repository tags. This is yet another popular way of measuring sort of technology adoption effectiveness. And more or less, again, the same patterns hold. So about 312 for MicroProfile, about the same for Jakarta EE. I didn't count Java EE and whatnot. I just wanted to keep it pretty straightforward. So I just looked at Jakarta EE, and that's about, again, about 300. You can see Quarkus, it's substantially higher, right? Probably by the same amount of margins that you would see on a graph for Google Trends, about 1,500 or more. And then again, when you look at Spring Boot, it's just not a comparison at all. It's like, almost 60,000 repositories tagged with Spring Boot. Same story with more or less the same story for Stack Overflow. The story looks a little bit better for Jakarta EE because actually Stack Overflow sort of retired the Java EE tag and moved things over to this Jakarta EE tag. So that's why the number looks a little bit better. It's about 30K, whereas the really small, about 300 for MicroProfile. Again, relatively respectable number for Quarkus, although not really that large, about 4,500. Whereas again, when you look at Spring, it's like there's not even a comparison. Almost 150K questions, as opposed to the really small amount that's for MicroProfile, and even counting things like Jakarta EE and /Java EE, and Quarkus, it's just substantially higher.
Yeah,
So what
Reza,
do you-
for this one, I want to say something.
Sure.
I think his Spring Boot has been around for a long time. I think his MicroProfile and Quarkus have not been that long. I assume this aggregation, right? So it's from the history, the no time, kind of the duration for this. Is that
I
right?
don't think it's fully aggregate, no. To be honest, I think if it was aggregated, it would be probably even higher numbers for Spring Boot. So I do think there's some kind of temporal
Yeah, I understand
temporal
it.
function to it, but I don't know how strong.
Right, I just trying to understand the data point to see is this kind of the for 1 year or this number is for in the history. So do
I
you
think
know?
it's history, but it's not indefinite history. But I will double check that.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it's not forever history because just in terms of personal intuition, I think it would be a lot higher, both for Jakarta and Spring Boot, if because Stack Overflow has been around for a long time. 150 questions, I think it's probably a low number, but that's my initial answer. I will cross check that, but my suspicion is that no, this is not forever. There's probably some temporal dynamic to this as well. Sure, but honestly, yeah, I mean, you can say that for pretty much anything, but ultimately, there's certainly the Google Trends data is temporal, right? I mean, there's an aggregate effect, right, of a technology being around for 15 years versus being around for however long that MicroProfile has been. But regardless, ultimately the adoption is pretty clear what the trends are. But yes, I mean, we could say, okay, these are newer technologies, but I don't think that alone really explains the differential in my honest opinion. Okay, so where does this bring us? I think the objective place that this brings us is we really have some serious work to do, certainly in terms of marketing, to understand how do we increase adoption for MicroProfile. I think the first step here is in my opinion, we need to collaborate with the Jakarta working group. Couple of reasons. Number one, things are not exactly working for them, but they are doing better than us. So if there's some strategy and tactics that we can leverage from them, I think we should go ahead and do that. I think certainly getting the tutorial out is one of those things. But there could be other things potentially that we could borrow from Jakarta. Similarly, I'd like to make a request that maybe we should have a chat with who believes themselves, person or persons that are sort of responsible for Quarkus mindshare and market relevance, and similarly try to have a conversation with them to see what suggestions they may have for MicroProfile in order to adopt strategy and tactics. And maybe one answer here is that we simply do not have adequate budget if we want to see success of this working group. Maybe ultimately the answer is that we need to increase our budget in order for this to be relevant and effective in terms of its adoption. That's another potential answer to the question. But ultimately, I think the first thing is we need to go and at least do some knowledge sharing with possibly with Jakarta, and I think also with Quarkus. I think the Spring folks are never going to help us in that way. And frankly speaking, I put in the Spring data primarily to ground us in terms of the reality of what is happening, not so much that I think we need to get something, get some kind of help from the Spring community. I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll continue to track these metrics. As I said, if you have questions, suggestions, feedback, whatever, I'm happy to hear it. We're early days in doing these sort of things for MicroProfile. We probably should have done it a bit earlier, but here we are. At least we're going forward. We'll be doing this in a more regular cadence. I think the cadence that we agreed upon was once a quarter. So we'll go ahead and do this kind of thing for once a quarter. And yeah, again, if you have other things that you would like to see us track instead, I'm happy to do some of that as well. But do remember the baseline we agreed upon Google Trends, and I think that's just about right. Everything else that we've seen basically can be summarized by the data that you see for Google Trends. It's pretty accurate and probably unbiased, reflection of what's actually happening. All right, that's about it. I'm gonna stop sharing and then guess we can
This is,
discuss or get back to the main program or what have you.
thanks, Reza. I mean, I this is probably discussed in the marketing call, which I missed again, sorry. But if you think about, Quarkus and Spring Boot and just the amount of content that gets pushed out. Now, we're working on tutorial right for the first time, okay, I think. The amount of content that's been pushed out for years by those two technologies and the people that work for Red Hat and Pivotal, Spring, VMware, whatever it's called now, right? Broadcom. And it's overwhelming, right? Compared to what MicroProfile has done. I mean, the conference talks here and there, great, but think of the sheer volume of content that's been pushed out about those other, if you're going to compare to just those two. Okay. I don't know if increasing a budget could even come close. So yes, having, right, somewhat of a, for bottom of a better term, custom product journey, tutorials, explainer videos, whatever, we start there. But is the is the goal to get that kind of mind share? That can't be done without an awful lot of people and an awful lot of money focused 100% on this. Just my
So reminder, the Jakarta working group does basically fund, or at least fully or partially, Ivar's time essentially to go to Jakarta advocacy. Yes, it's probably still nothing. One advocate is probably still nothing compared to a team, but
So,
just
again, it's like, Jakarta E spawned from Enterprise Java, so there's already in the mindset of the user, it's there, right? Look, I'm not saying it's bad or anything. I'm just saying it's just putting in perspective, And I don't know the answer. I mean, this is might not be the right forum. It's a community call. Why not? Maybe it is the right forum. And look, I have a very limited and maybe different perspective than everyone else. I'm not an engineer, but I'm an ecosystem. So you all may think, well, that's nothing you say makes sense, but that's fine.
Yeah, I do share what you are thinking, Vince. It's if you look at the blogs and also the paid advocate. Look at the Spring Boot. Then they have dedicated basically dev advocates traveling all the time and also publishing kind of talks and blogs all the time. I think it's kind of with that effort, like they put in versus the effort MicroProfile put in the huge difference. So
that's paid strategy, paid media is not ever going to work for this. Like I was talking to somebody at Red Hat a few years ago, and they were saying that they used Facebook successfully for some campaigns in their mindset, but their acquisition cost was $60 per download of a free ebook. Well, so forget about that kind of thing. Is it to be more tightly coupled with Quarkus and Spring and Java? Maybe, I don't know, or maybe Open Java. Maybe that's the answer. So the adoption, I don't know. Is that the answer, to be more tightly coupled with those Open JDK and or enterprise Java, core Java?
Well, what I find interesting is Jakarta is not an implementation of anything, and MicroProfile is not an implementation of anything, right? So comparing MicroProfile to Jakarta in terms of adoption and interest and all that kind of stuff is relevant. It's more relevant than comparing them to implementations of the specs, right? Or even maybe Spring. To a degree, right? So it would be interesting. It's like, well, we would almost have to compare OpenLiberty plus Quarkus plus EAP plus Helidon plus Pyara plus Tommy, compare all that in aggregate to Spring or whatever, right? Not entirely a fair comparison, but not entirely unfair either, right?
Honestly, John, I did that, and yeah, that picture doesn't look good either. I got
No, I actually don't disagree with you
Looks
on that.
worse.
Yeah. Well, it can't be worse if the aggregate.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's
the
the
expectation. Maybe it
The
doesn't
reason
meet
it looks worse
expectations.
is like, to be honest, the traditional MicroProfile or Jakarta runtimes are not doing so great in
Right.
terms of in terms of, at least in terms of, at the bare minimum, in terms of how it looks like in Google Trends.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like we would have to. What would be interesting is to add a Java versus Node versus Go or whatever languages and see the trends of the languages as well, right? Because Java used to be on top, now it's number 3 if I remember correctly. Depending on who you look at.
You mean from like a new adoption? Like
TOB, yeah, no, or no, just like usage, right? TOB or the Red Monk. I forgot their language tracking mechanism, but the TOB index, right, is how we used to compare language adoption, and Java has actually moved from number 1 to number 3 behind either JavaScript and Node and Python, right? So now the workloads are different, right? With Python. But still, what's interesting is are we also in Spring as well would get caught up in this being impacted by the changing dynamics of the Java ecosystem. But your point about relative to Spring, yeah, that's always been the case. I mean, I've been tracking Spring versus all sorts of other runtimes. And Jakarta is when Java EE, right? Going back to 2009. And the numbers have always been in Spring's favor. Although now, relatively speaking, it's probably worse. I think a lot of that has to do with the period between 2014 and probably 2019, is where a lot of that growth happened for Spring. Now we'll just have to figure out, what to do about it. So, all right. So what do you think? Sorry, Reza, next steps, I think you mentioned maybe we should chat about, chat with the Jakarta team around
I believe so, yeah.
collaboration.
And we just need to have in my opinion, we need to have an honest conversation with them and say, okay, you guys are doing slightly better than us. So let's exchange views of what, if anything, can we adopt. And yeah, again, John, like maybe at the end of the day, you just say, okay, we can't do this for this working group. But one answer could be potentially figuring out like how to maybe buy part of Ivar's time or hire another Ivar and figure out like how do we do that? That could be one answer. Certainly a modest increase in our marketing budget could be another answer. It could help us maybe buy a little bit more of the content. Right now, we're really not very good at content at all. I'm glad we finally at least have the tutorial out there because that will help SEO a tiny bit. But yeah, that could be one of the answers. So, but okay, yeah, immediate next step is, I can absolutely, and both Emily and I can take that AI and go talk to essentially the Jakarta side of things and say, hey, are you willing to sort of have a chat with us and brainstorm about what potentially we could adopt in terms of strategies and tactics.
Emily, you're on. I'll mute Emily. Okay.
Is there a way
What
to
was
go
I-
to to YouTube and just do a search for a number of videos that have MicroProfile in the title?
Yeah, we can do that. That's another metric.
I've never done that kind of report. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's an idea. I can do that.
Curious to see
Videos is
what-
another sort of similar metric. Yeah, I would categorize that as similar to the GitHub repos and Stack Overflow questions, but we can do that, sure.
Right. I had this great insightful thought that I forgot.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. It gets worse
I
when you
hate when
get
that happens.
when you start getting gray hair. It gets worse. I'm telling you now.
No, I guess we could still try to leverage Java user groups too. Try to
Yeah.
have some more talks on MicroProfile. I mean, I've done it a few times over the years with the Garden State jug, but you know, there's been such a focus on Jakarta EE that, you know, at least for me, you know, kind of, you know, forgot about MicroProfile. Not forget, but you know what I'm saying? It's kind of, you know, kind of put on the back burner a bit.
Right.
But I don't know.
All right.
But having said, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, the simple things about planning and organizing talks. I mean, no one wants to hear, with rare exceptions, right? Like around the Eclipse Foundation. Oh, I think I know what I was going to ask. When's the next Jakarta? This is my insightful thought, which is not very insightful. When's the next Jakarta developer survey going to be out?
The next
know
one
it's-
or this one, John? So remember, we're collaborating on the technical survey next. So
Right.
hopefully that'll come about in the next few weeks.
Developer
Okay.
survey is live now, right?
Yeah, so that's going to be roughly a year from now. The next one.
Right. No, but the developer survey is going to be published when?
It's already up. Oh, you
Oh.
mean the results? Do you
Yes, the results.
Okay, yeah, sometime in fall.
Okay. All right. So we
Pretty
still
fall.
got time. That was my not so insightful thought. I just thought it might give us a more recent data point, but okay.
Sure.
All right. We definitely have some food for thought. I do think a lot of it has to do with content.
Marketing.
Well, no, it's all marketing, in my opinion. What I meant by content is actual marketing type content. So the tutorial, to Reza's point, is good. Organizing amongst all of ourselves conferences that we're attending, the topics, because most, you know, people don't want to hear outside of, you know, Eclipse specific conferences. They don't want to generally hear just about here's the latest Jakarta or here's the latest MicroProfile, right? They want it in context of something. So we should probably maybe collaborate around the sessions that we've got, the role of MicroProfile in those sessions across the various conferences that we plan to attend. So
Yeah,
That's a
the
thought.
other things also for the implementations, when we basically promote implementations, we should also tag a MicroProfile Jakarta EE. So basically in return, so this is pretty much important as well.
Mhm. And I like the idea of getting out there. I know it's very premature, right? MicroProfile AI and you know, just discuss that we're all looking at this collaboratively, right? It's very early. But you know, maybe that can get us more participation as well. So I don't know if anyone's actually submitted MicroProfile AI sessions, because I know it's very, very early and it's kind of premature, but we kind of need to get that out there, I think, in some way, about the role that MicroProfile is playing or can play in the evolution of AI in Java.
Yeah, we did briefly mention that because Antonio also won the organizer for DevOps France. So that's a
Oh.
really big conference.
Yeah.
We are thinking maybe next year and also do the talks there. Yeah, of course, the DevNexus as well. And don't know whether it makes sense for DevOps Belgium this year. Maybe we could I think that will be in November. Maybe that's a good time to start to socialize.
That's a good point.
Yeah, DevOps Belgium, and things and more conferences.
Okay.
Well, just wanted to point out, having said what I said a few minutes ago, you know, both Ivar and I did highlight the MicroProfile JWT bridge, new spec that's being worked on, and you know, just you know, and then now MicroProfile AI, you know, so I think we just keep putting out the word.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying to work on a comprehensive example saying, here is a Jakarta security before the bridge, and here's a Jakarta security example with the bridge. You know, that's kind of what I've been trying to work on.
Right.
You know, get some more, but yeah.
Okay, and before we run out of time, I want to switch gears here real quick. Jug, Atlanta Jug, you want to cover DevNexus?
Hey,
Sorry, your
well, he
name is
travels
still
real
Atlanta
fast.
Jug.
What was the question?
No, just if you had any thoughts about DevNexus. I think we've talked about it among some of the speakers in a prior live hangout
Yeah.
marketing call. But
Yeah.
if you had any thoughts that you wanted to share, and maybe how we can
It's
be involved in maybe, you know, making any contributions next year as well.
well, the conversation around DevNexus is I think it's very relevant to the adoption conversation for MicroProfile, right? So, look, I remember talking to somebody on a podcast, and they're like, actually, Nate Shudo said, "Oh, it's so well known." I'm like, "No, it's not. Nobody knows about this thing. Nobody does." And in some ways, that's kind of like MicroProfile. Like the speakers know, right? The people in the ecosystem know about DevNexus, they know about MicroProfile. The people that pay attention to things know, but the audience, the general audience, doesn't know. So in some ways, we face the same challenges of like, oh well, there's this thing that's been going on for 20 years now. Why is it not? Why are we not busting at the seams in the venue? Because no one knows about it, and the audience is aging out as well. So how do we reach the new people? I don't mean new grads. I just mean people that have come into tech in the last 10 years that only now should start paying attention to things like conferences or MicroProfile. How do you reach them? And it's super hard to do. It's just content all the time, right? No, the event was great. And I think I think everyone that was there that came and supported it as sponsors and the other open source projects found it valuable. As an organizer, I really like to have, you know, projects there that aren't funded by massive companies that, you know, can, I guess MySQL kind of is, but you know what I mean, can talk to people about what they do and why, and help to foster that some of that adoption, that there is an alternative to other things that then, and how do I, sorry, my notifications are, wish I could unmute.
Well, we don't hear anything, or at least I didn't.
So from an organizer's perspective, it was great. You know, we're still a way away from the 2,400 people we had in 2020. They haven't come back. In fact, in the US, none of the conferences are back to pre-pandemic levels yet. None of them, like they are in the EU. Don't get me going on that.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything that you know. I think other conferences might, you know, it might be worth reaching out to other community conferences and saying, look, can we come and have a booth at no cost, right? And maybe not everybody thinks like I do, but I think about the attendee experience and what they would like more than the amount of dollars that come in. But that's another way to get the word out. But again, it just takes time and effort from the community. You know, we're all volunteers. You know, none of us are paid to do this by Red Hat or Broadcom.
Right.
Yeah, so it's I want to say thank you, Vincent, for offering the MicroProfile booth. It's great. We did had a good kind of good amount of visitors, good number of visitors. They have a really good conversations, and also the swag, so giveaway, so which is great. As you say, as you said, I think his maybe MicroProfile marketing need to basically put aside some kind of low cost and also approach some Europe conferences. I don't know whether it's the DevOps Belgium or some others to have a booth as well. I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
I mean, like we weren't doing demos, were we? I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what were the conversations in the MicroProfile booth?
Yeah, it's
Was it-
basically it's you basically ask the people came around and then they said, do they use MicroProfile? Yeah, a few of them use MicroProfile for production, and however, a majority of them I have not heard of MicroProfile. So it's basically that really
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not just MicroProfile that has this problem.
Mm.
Right? I was at AOE reInvent with JFrog a few years ago, and people were coming up and were like, "I've never heard of JFrog," and would say, "Well, do you use Artifactory?" "Oh yeah, we use it all the time." Well, there you go.
It's
So this whole conversation about naming and whatever else and products, it's not confined to a volunteer-run open source project. Trust me.
See,
Mm.
and I think that's the problem both Jakarta and MicroProfile suffer, right? It's like everyone is using some pieces of Jakarta when they use Spring, right? They just don't know
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And go on down the list with an awful lot of Java runtimes out there. They're using pieces of Jakarta and MicroProfile,
Mhm.
and they just don't know it. Emerson?
Yeah, just following the Emily description, one of the most common situations is the people doesn't know what is MicroProfile, and even we try to streamline MicroProfile with the microservice development for the common tasks and trying to connect all the specifications with things like reducing boilerplate but driving the conversation with this topic with there are some discussion about the complexity of microservice. Maybe it's a good time to change the discourse and say that even if microservice is not your thing, you can still simplify in development, and MicroProfile is still offering you common tasks across any architecture and any other things, and presenting it like an alternative to Spring implementation, and trying to look cohesion between Jakarta and all the other projects is maybe a better effort than competing with the Spring.
Mm-hmm. Reza?
So I have definitive answers to Emily's other questions. It is kind of sort of from the beginning of time, the tags. So the Spring Boot tag, which is the most active Spring tag, was created about 10 years ago. The Jakarta E tag was created about 5 years ago, and that's basically the Java EE tag. There is no other.
Sorry, tag created where?
Stack Overflow.
Okay.
Stack Overflow. So yeah, it's sort of in the beginning of time, but it depends on when that tag was created. But yes, Spring is about 10 years worth. Java EE is about 5 years worth. I haven't checked it, but when the MicroProfile tag was created, let me check that.
Well, I think I brought this up in the marketing call yesterday. It's kind of an unfair comparison because Spring routes all of their support through Stack Overflow. Other vendors, like I know with Quarkus, we have our own discussion forums, right? So we're not, and I suspect each vendor handles it differently. Obviously, we all have Stack Overflow tags, right? We have people monitoring Stack Overflow, but it's not necessarily the primary venue for community discussions like it is for Spring. But go ahead, Reza.
I just checked the MicroProfile tag. Yeah, it's not new. This was also created 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's about the same age as the Java E tag, and maybe half the age of the Spring. But yes, yeah, I know. So the Spring folks route all of their stuff from Stack. They use Stack Overflow essentially as their support system, community support system.
So if you look from a different angle, maybe MicroProfile is so easy, they don't need to ask on Stack Overflow.
Okay, that's our marketing answer, and we're going to stick to it.
I don't think our management would accept that answer if they were the users of MicroProfile.
Yeah,
That's good. I like that.
no questions. Too clear.
All right,
Yeah,
so we got about
I,
5 minutes
okay.
left. I don't know if there's any other topics or conversations. Mike, go ahead. Unless anyone
No, I
else has
just
anything.
wanted to say that I did an hour at the MicroProfile booth and noticed the same thing, that a lot of people weren't familiar with it. So of course I did my overview and, you know, talked about all the specifications. But yeah, it's surprising, and it's been around since 2016. So yeah.
Are they all Spring users? I
Yeah,
mean, because it's primarily a Java conference.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Well, I can't say for sure. There may have been some discussions on Spring,
Okay.
but
Yeah, so that's why the
Yeah.
having a booth is really worthwhile. We should do
Mm.
more kind of the conference present.
yeah, and I could start with my own Java group, and you know, maybe I have an older MicroProfile presentation that needs quite a bit of updating. So it's something I can do later this year.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, everyone. I think we're pretty much at the top of the hour here, so I'm going to call this close the curtain here on the show. We'll see everyone next week at the technical call and in 2 weeks at the live hangout. Thanks everyone for joining.
All right, take care, guys. Yep.
Yeah, bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
I